Question 3, leading on inclusion requires sharing information and getting them to do things. This is forever a challenge, but especially in the era of COVID-19. When there are competing urgencies, what are effective ways of ensuring the information around inclusion doesn't get lost? And the question starts off with Daniel.
I have a rule in my team that I don't care how you say something, I only really care if it lands. Meaning that whether you communicate, how you communicate, as long as it's effective, that's what counts. In the sort of the broader field of education, where schools may be dealing with more challenging cases such as children who may be in distress, or there are aspects of abuse and so forth. Where things tend to go wrong as a general rule is a lack of communication. And there are certain cases, which I'm sure is true in every country, bubble up to the surface, to the news, where what we end up finding out is that if only they'd passed the information on effectively to this organisation, from that organisation had told the school, and the school had told, there was a lack of communication. And so much of where problems arise for school leaders is in the communication breakdowns. And so I just would like to perhaps emphasise something which I think is perhaps obvious, but what's interesting, and something which I put in one of my books as a chapter, is that, you know, we don't tend to train school leaders in different ways of speaking effectively to different stakeholders. So, for example, by means of an example, I was asked by a particular organisation, national organisation here in the UK, to speak at a conference. And I was one of 4 or 5 people speaking at it. Now, when I spoke to them nearer the time, just a week in advance, I'm looking forward to speaking at this conference, I asked them how many people have turned up, and they said, well, we've had a very small response. And I said, well, can I just see what you've sent out to people? And what they had written, I thought, was very boring. I don't need to read it out, but and I can't even remember it, but whatever it was really boring, and it was really rubbish. And I mean, are we surprised that they had a very small response? So I said to them, let's think about the 3 biggest pain points. You want school principals to come to this particular session, and they're going to give up their valuable time. And why would they do that unless you're going to help them save time, save money, save stress? Of school principals or school leaders around the world. If you're not, so therefore, if you're speaking to a school leader as a leader in the school, you need to present that we need to prioritize, you know, these issues. We need to hurdle how we're going to communicate this issues or get this program done, and prioritize this to your leadership team. Then it better be something that is going to make them sit up. So frame it as something that's really relevant. So instead of instead of just saying, look, we need to spend more money on this program, and actually that is a fast track way of not getting money spent on your program. So what we could say is, what I'd like to do is to I found a way of us being able to save quite a bit of time, stress, and money if we invest in this program. Can we talk about it? Now that is nothing peculiar or specific to education. It's about making sure that whoever you're presenting to and whoever you're speaking to, you understand what their pain points are, what their issues are, and you're framing it for them. It could be that you would say exactly the same program, but for your parents. So let's talk about that exact same program. We haven't named what this program is yet, but let's just say it's a program around reading boosting, okay? It's about reading. And we've told our we've told our school principal and our other senior leaders that this is a program which is predominantly about saving stress and saving time, saving money, and also boosting grades. It's going to help us with our attaining our targets. So now, how are we going to speak to our parents about this? Well, I wouldn't tell them about saving money and saving time and saving stress necessarily. It might help if you say it might save some stress at home. That might help. Another thing that might help is if you say, if you know that parents of this particular cohort, let's say, for example, they're interested in making sure that their child really feels like they can make good progress. If that's a key phrase for you, and it isn't for every parent. Some parents really lead with the idea that they just want their child to be happy. So then, of course, what you would do is you'd mention that. You'd say, I really think this is a great program that could really support your child being happy. So what we're doing is we're adapting our language to speak to different stakeholders. It's about getting different characters in the school effectively. I'll just add a slightly different dimension to this and then I'll pause. So far, just to sort of clarify, we're talking about speaking to people effectively using their pain points or using what they are most interested in. And that's a way of getting things on their agenda. And then the other thing is about how. Very often, school leaders are used to receiving 50 to 100 emails a day and sometimes more. Sometimes actually sending yet another email is not an effective approach. I've found in general, getting a teacher, a classroom teacher, to take up an initiative, actually one of the best ways of doing it is not by sending them an email or by making an announcement, but is actually by going up to them in the staff room with a cup of coffee and saying, how are you, can we just talk about this situation? I'm wondering if you could help me out with such and such. And it's a little chat. Sometimes that can be effective. I call that sort of like coffee communication, or the idea of little bite-sized communication with people, and chatting personally can be a lot more effective. So the how of communication is possibly as important as the what. And then just finally, it's not assuming that just because you've said it, it means that it's been said and heard. I actually think that for you to get an initiative done, or for you to make sure that something is communicated, it requires quite a bit of follow-up. And what I feel is, if I've said, for example, to my team, right, everybody, I want us all to be using this program. Thank you very much. We'll be using this program and we'll be trialing it, and let's talk in 2 weeks' time about how we're getting on with that program. In 2 weeks' time, I come back and say, so how was it using that particular program? And it was like, what program? What are you talking about? Then whose fault is that? I think personally, I always assume it's mine. I tried to communicate that I wanted them to do something. Is it because they ignored me? Possibly. But probably what it is that I didn't communicate it effectively. And the effective communication might require me following up the day later and say, look, I know I mentioned this yesterday. I'm just wondering how you're going to go about starting this program that we said we were going to trial. And so I'm following up, and I'm taking responsibility to make sure that those messages are coming through. And I'm usually asking, is there anything that I can do to support you through this process? Is there anything I can do to support you by using this program, and so forth? I've talked about, in short, I've talked about the what, which is about making sure that you target what you say or frame what you say to specific individuals, and making sure that they were willing to hear it. The how, and reiterating and taking responsibility for your own communication. And I think those things will help you keep up on the agenda the important items around inclusion.